textile Louisiana. I'm Chef John Folse, welcoming you to this great state of ours. These beautiful plantation homes reflect the fascinating history of our culture and cuisine, and I'd like to share this story with you. Why not join me and some of my friends as we visit the plantation homes of our state and cook up another great Taste of Louisiana?
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Louisiana Gold and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products. Additional funding is provided by the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. Gumbo, etouffee, jambalaya, beignet. Come pass a good time in Louisiana and say things you've never seen before.
The William Hutchinson family migrated to America from Ireland in the late 1600s seeking fame and fortune. They arrived here in North Louisiana in the mid-1800s, and it was here that they built their neoclassical cottage and called it the Big House. They were God-fearing, a very religious family who, along with their 9 children, established the first Methodist church in this area. Tradition had it that the family would all meet here right after Sunday services at the plantation. It was a sea captain who had sailed the Caspian Sea many years before, upon seeing this house, gave it its permanent name. I'm Chef John Folse. Welcome to Caspiana Plantation. The Big House was moved to its present site on the campus of LSU Shreveport in 1976. Originally 950 acres, Caspiana was built by William Hutchinson and his wife, Adeline Strother. Their descendants donated the building and many of its artifacts to LSU as home to the Pioneer Heritage Center. When fully operational, visitors will experience a rare glimpse into our North Louisiana plantation past. Here, Katherin Aulds demonstrates the art of spinning cotton into thread to a very difficult student. Each Tuesday and Thursday from March to November, school children from throughout Louisiana are invited to tour the center and experience not only early cloth-making techniques, but many other bits of interesting 18th century life. This old plantation loom is just one more example of the unique exhibits here sure to intrigue the young and old alike. This loom was used to weave spun thread into cloth. When looking at this piece, it's hard to imagine just how long it took to create a simple dress. One of the great quilt collections is housed here, and this particular one is lined with a friend's wedding dress in hopes of preserving it. My favorite quilt in the house is this very colorful one thought to be of African-American origin because of the interesting primitive designs and its many earthy colors, all pieced together in high contrast. Often quilts were made of scrap materials in small patches donated by a friend or neighbor taking part in its very construction. The rusty color seen here is made from the red clay of a nearby river. This coloring technique was quite common and used not only here in Louisiana, but also in many other parts of the world. Another small quilt decorates the wall behind this baby's bed. This antique bed is made of bamboo and attests to the talents of the builder. Fishing was considered a social outing back then, and one artifact of special interest is this boat made by Mr. Hutchinson at the turn of the century. An original feature is this live well built into the bottom of the boat, allowing the catch of the day to remain alive until cooking. This picture shows the family dressed for a typical day of fishing. This little doctor's office originally belonged to Dr. T.E. Shepard and came from the original Caspiana site 15 miles downriver. This tiny museum contains many examples of early medical instruments, including medicines used to treat the ill in the mid to late 1800s. Many herbs and plants were also used as remedies then. Though primitive by today's standards, they certainly did the job. One piece sure to capture your attention is this old dentist chair with its foot-powered drill. Though a visit to the plantation doctor may not have been a treat to the patient back then, I'm certain many a life was saved in this simple building on the grounds of Caspiana Plantation. Now, for all of you skeptics out there who didn't think that I finished my thread, look at this cotton right here. Look how nice a job I did at it. Well, no, I'm just kidding you. She gave me this as a gift, but I'm still practicing. I don't know if I'll ever be any good at it. You know what's amazing is how varied the uses of these plantation homes are today in Louisiana. Some people live in them as private homes. Other people open them to the public. And of course, tourists come from all over the world to visit these plantations. And yet others, like Caspiana, are open as a museum where children or adults alike can come day in and day out to learn just a little bit more about how life was back in the 1800s. And if you have a group of school children that would like to come to visit Caspiana, give them a call. It's open on Tuesday and Thursday for children to come in and see all of these wonderful things. It's a great outing, I guarantee you. Well, you heard that the Hutchinson family was from England originally, Irish, some Scots in their blood, but the foods that they would have created there had to do a lot with vegetable gardening because obviously the English were great at it. And instead of raising a lot of beef and cattle, pork, or even game, they didn't do a lot of game hunting. They loved to fish and raise gardens. So much of the dishes at Caspiana would have been just like what you see here on my platter. This dish right here, though, having a little bit Spanish influence, it's going to be a vegetable chili, certainly with a lot of the Hutchinson flavor in the pot. Here we have some zucchini squash, we have some broccoli, here's the yellow squash, tomatoes, and the kidney beans and the white navy beans, which will help thicken the chili. Just a really nice example of one of those varied dishes from Caspiana. And the way we make the chili, in my black iron pot, I'm going to put a little bit buttery flavored oil, and I'm going to saute all of these nice vegetables down in the bottom of this pot. And I want you to think about this for a minute. Vegetable chili. Now, of course, we've made it with meats for many years, but in the early days, chili actually started as a vegetable dish. But then as people got a little bit, I guess a little bit more used to eating ground beefs and some of the lesser important cuts, they would chop it up and add it to the vegetables, and the chili as we know it from the Old West originated in those pots. But not here. It had to be vegetables. We're going to put in a little bit of the broccoli. One of my flowers went in there. That's an edible flower, so that's okay. I'm going to put in the squash and, of course, the beans. And as I said, the beans are going to act as a thickening agent down in this pot of chili. Let me keep turning all of this around here. I'm going to put some of the white beans in here and, of course, the tomato. Now, once all of these things really start to simmer, they're going to release the flavors of those great fresh vegetables down in the bottom of this pot. Just look at the colors down in there. Another thing that I like about this chili dish, and I can turn this fire way high here. This is going to be a really nice flavor, but yet a little spicy too. You see that little hot pepper here. Look at that little hot cayenne pepper down in here from the Spanish influence again. And once it's stirred, of course, I can add a little bit more of the heat. I'm going to put some fresh chilies, which would have crossed the border right from Texas into the Shreveport area where Caspiana House was located. So that goes down into the chili, and once this sautés for just a couple of minutes, at this point in the West, they would add some chopped beef. In the Caspiana area, they may even add some fish or shrimp to it at this point. But if you're a vegetarian, leave it just like this. It's going to be great. Okay, now I can add my tomatoes. This is going to be whole tomatoes, and I've left a little bit juice in the tomatoes. I'll stir those in like that. And the colors are really so nice in this dish. I often think about topping something else with it, like putting a little spoon of this vegetable chili, almost like a salsa on top of a, say, grilled T-bone steak. It makes a really nice salsa topping with that chili flavor. Okay, that's in. Now I can add my tomato sauce, which is where my chili sauce is going to come from. Remember those little chili peppers that I added in there just a second ago. And I'm going to add my chili powder. Now, I would put probably about 2 teaspoons of chili powder into this vegetable chili to give it a really nice flavor. But some people really not liking chili powder will stay away from it and use only the chili peppers to give the spice. Stay away from the chili powder. But, hey, chili without chili powder, I don't know. Okay. Now that this is going to come to a boil, the beans will thicken it, just like cooking a big pot of red beans or white beans. It'll thicken it as it comes to a rolling boil. And then, of course, I could start to add some of my own flavorings to it that I would want to finish the dish with, so to speak. I can add some green onions to it, some chopped green onions, which will certainly give flavor. I can add some garlic, because I would never cook a dish, whether English or otherwise, without a touch of garlic. And of course, some Louisiana pepper sauce and a touch of basil and thyme, just a little touch of chopped basil and thyme. And this is dried herbs. Bring this to a rolling boil, reduce it to simmer, and let it cook for about 30 minutes, and it's going to be absolutely spectacular. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just let it sit here and simmer on a real low heat for just a second. In fact, I'll cut that way low, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a couple of minutes. I'll show you what that finished dish looks like. Okay, the next dish I want to share with you, another great dish from Caspiana, is a Caspiana fried catfish. Remember, it was on the Red River, and that river is full of catfish, and certainly this dish would have been used often when coming right back from one of those fishing trips in that boat with the live well that you saw. Imagine here's a seat, you take the top off, there's water running through it, and you can keep live fish in there until you get home to do the fish fry. Well, this is what they would have brought home. If you can take a look in this bowl, here I have some catfish fillets. This is about a 5 ounce. This would have come off of about a 1 pound, a pound and a half fish. You can see how pretty and white it is. Of course, you can buy this catfish in the stores today. Any seafood market around the country will carry catfish. And it's a really nice firm fish for frying. And to make the batter for the Caspiana fried fish, I've got in this bowl here, I've got 1 egg, I've got some Creole mustard you see here, and some yellow mustard, and the egg is going to kind of hold it all together. There's no cream in this batter whatsoever. The mustard is going to give it a really nice tart taste, and I'm going to put a little Worcestershire sauce to give it more flavor, and a touch of that Louisiana pepper sauce for spice. And again, just kind of stir this around for a second. And once I put the fish in the batter, I would allow this fish to sit here for about 30 minutes in this really nice mustard batter, because that's going to give it the flavor that's important in this dish. It's going to give it a really nice tart but yet spicy flavor because of the Creole mustard and the hot sauce. Kind of stir it around and coat it well like this. Get some really nice coating on it. And once that sits here for a couple of minutes, then I would make a batter. You see this yellow corn flour I have in the bowl next to it. Here in Louisiana, we can buy many different seasoned fish fries. However, yellow corn flour is what we're looking for if you live in another part of the country, and you can spice it with a little cracked pepper or a touch of salt, just as I'm doing here, and season it up. You can add some powdered garlic to it, which I like a lot, and with the mustard, you're going to have a great, great fish flavor. So I'm going to take this out of here and put it into the yellow corn flour. I'll take out a couple pieces. I've already fried a bunch of the fish, but I just want you to see what this looks like as it goes into the batter like this, or the yellow corn flour. And I can stir it around to coat it well. And if you're going to use your hands, that's okay. Use one hand to put the fish in the flour and one hand to turn it over, and you won't have all of that goo sticking to your hand, but I'm going to do it this way. Okay, the oil that I'm using is a vegetable oil. The vegetable oil is in this little fryer, and it's at 375 degrees, which is perfect for deep frying fish. If it's cooler than that, if you've ever had problems where your batter falls off the fish, it's because you put it in too cold an oil. 375 degrees is perfect. Now, I'll lower the fish right down into the oil like this. Just a couple nice pieces. And I would allow this fish to fry just until it comes back up to the top, which takes, a couple of minutes. It'll float when it's done. That's a really nice way to know if your fish is done. If it floats, the fish is going to be done, and that normally takes just a couple of minutes. And I want to show you what it looks like. I'm going to let this fry here, but I want to show you what it looks like when the fish is all put together on the platter. Take a look at this nice platter, and what I've done here is I've layered it. You see there's 3 fillets on the bottom, there's 3 fillets on the top, and between each layer I've put some of these onions, some green onions, and I put a little touch of vinegar, as I'm doing here, and with the mustard, it gives the fish a really nice, interesting taste, and the steam coming from the fillets will actually cook those onions, and you have just a magnificent fish dish. Really, really interesting dish from Caspiana Plantation. Okay, now I want to show you a couple other dishes that we found there that always accompanies this fried fish. Here we have the Shreveport stuffed mushrooms, and these mushrooms are stuffed with crab meat and put on a little bit of gratin sauce, a really nice appetizer from the plantation. And this dish is one of my favorite coming from South Louisiana. I love jambalaya. This is a jambalaya rice salad, which just goes to show you how the flavors kind of cross from one part of Louisiana to another. And this salad was served actually cold on the dinner table at Caspiana. Now my fish, you can see, is starting to float here. You can see it's starting to come up to the top of the little frying pan, and I could actually take them out. Look how nice and golden brown they are. And I could take these fish out and put them on top of that platter and just continue to layer them, and they would be just wonderful. I'm going to get this out of the way here because I've got my good buddy coming to visit with me now. I told you that I was going to have Katherin Aulds, who's a docent. You saw her on the spinning wheel, and here she comes with my second lesson. I assume that's what it is,
that's
huh?
Right, John.
Come on in. How are you doing?
Just fine, thank you.
So I didn't do a good enough job,
well,
right?
I thought you needed a little bit, a few more hours of practice before we let you go.
I tell you, I had such a great time spinning with you that day over at Caspiana, and I shared that with all of my friends just a couple of minutes ago, and I thank you so much for coming back and giving me another lesson. How's everything going in Shreveport?
Just fine, thank you.
You know, when we were there, you saw I did the Caspiana fried catfish again. Remember when we were there, we also did the little oven fried squash?
Right.
And it went so well with the catfish that I decided to share that recipe with everybody today. And what I have here in my little bowl, of course, I have, what's this, the zucchini and yellow squash. You can see how nice all of these medallions are. And I'm going to put a little olive oil. And if you would just stir those up for me for just a second here, just to coat them well. Sometimes we do this in a paper bag or a plastic bag just to coat them nicely with the seasonings. And once all of these are well coated, then, of course, I can make a little batter again with breadcrumbs. I have a bowl right here. I have some breadcrumbs. I have some cheese in here. This is grated fresh Parmesan cheese, oregano. I put, again, a little salt and pepper in here, and I can mix all of this up and just put a couple of them in there for me. Just, never mind, I'll grab them. I don't want you to get that on your hands. My hands are already full of stuff, right? Okay, once the squash is really nice and coated, I would put them on a cookie sheet in about a 300, look how nice they are. I'd put them in about a 350-degree oven on a cookie sheet with just a little touch more of this olive oil, and what they look like is that little bowl right back there. How about grabbing that for me and just kind of hold it up there so everybody can get a good look at it. You see that?
Right.
And look how nice and crispy golden brown they are, and of course they serve just perfect with fried catfish and all those other nice things.
Looks good.
Hey, have a seat right here, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about Caspiana Plantation. I have some nice hot coffee here for you. I think it's hot. I just poured it a minute or so ago. How is it? Just like South Louisiana coffee. I don't know about North Louisiana coffee. Caspiana Plantation was moved twice on its original site before being moved to LSU Shreveport. How did that happen?
Well, the Junior League of Shreveport worked with LSU at moving it there. They felt the need to move it to keep it preserved and also to later use as a teaching tool in the community to help provide a way to show the cultural heritage of the state.
Now, you know, when I think of plantations, I always tell my viewers here that I think of plantation life from, say, New Orleans to Baton Rouge on the mighty Mississippi River right there at the port of New Orleans. But here's another great plantation in Shreveport. Shreveport must have been a really big commercial center back then.
Right, located on the Red River as we are, it was a natural place for people from East Texas and South Arkansas, and of course all over North Louisiana to bring their cotton and other goods to our port there and ship them to New Orleans.
Now, you've been working with the Pioneer Heritage Center, as it's called today. The house sits there right on the LSU campus on a couple acres of land. It's really a beautiful site. You are a florist by trade. You have a thriving business there in Shreveport, but yet you donate a couple days of your week to children coming through the site. Why do you do that? Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think being able to share our cultural heritage with the children and let them see how the pioneers lived and how their forefathers lived gives them a better aptitude at perhaps understanding today's way of life and some of the ways we do things today.
Well, you know, when I walked through the plantation myself, you had a class of maybe 15 or 20 young children. They looked like they were probably about in 5th or 6th grade. Now, you would normally think that those kids would be running all over the plantation, but in fact, they were standing there very attentive as you went through the store and as you went through the little doctor's office there, and the looks on their face made me realize, I guess for the first time, just how important it is that we preserve these plantations and teach these children about our past.
It is important that we preserve and teach. The children grasp a great deal more than what we think they do, and I think the way we present it, a lot of times we'll be wearing costume and they'll ask questions about some of our clothing and such.
Talking about clothing now, kiddingly, I was sitting on the spinning wheel and you were teaching me how to do the thread from a bowl of cotton. But after I look at that loom and I realize how long it must have taken to go from that bowl to an actual, say, piece of cloth. What kind of time period are we talking about?
Well, it's hard to put an actual number of days or weeks, but from the time that it's picked in the fields and has to be spun, of course, into the thread, and then the thread would have to be dyed. Then you go to the weaving loom, and it's pretty intricate operation to actually weave the cloth. So you'd probably be looking at, say 6 months from the field to the finished product, the finished shirt.
That's unbelievable. So it must have made cloth not only very valuable, but a pretty rare commodity back then.
Right. That's why people didn't have a great many clothes. They might have a couple of sets of clothes, an everyday set and a Sunday set. But the cloth was such a wonderful thing for them to have, and they had to utilize it to its fullest. And once they the father, say, wore it, and then the younger son may have worn the cut-down model, and from there it would have been relegated to the scrap bag, where the scraps were very important also. They were made into rag rugs and into the quilts that we're so famous for.
What other materials were available? When I was there, you showed me how you spin wool the same way as we did with the cotton, and then, of course, the cotton, the brown and white cotton. But what other cloths were available for making clothes then?
Well, wool and cotton were the most readily available. The other thing would have been the linen that made out of the flax. And any type of animal fiber is available to spin with. We've actually been doing some spinning with some dog fur and some cat fur there at Caspiana. And the children love the aspect of seeing that happen.
Well, dyes and colors. I'm amazed when I look at the beautiful quilts that were hanging on the wall, that are hanging on the wall there. And these colors came from river clays, and what else did they use to color materials with?
Onion skins, believe it or not, something we might think about throwing away, make a wonderful dye. The different nuts and berries, the blackberries and dewberries that are found in our area, the poke salad berries will work. First one type and then another of root will make a wonderful dye of different colors.
Today I understand, though, that there's actually people out there that's growing colored cotton, right?
Yes, there's a lady out in California who's worked to develop both blue cotton and green cotton.
Well, too bad we didn't have a couple fields back then.
Truly.
Well, I have to congratulate y'all at Caspiana for the great job that you're doing, making here yet another use of a Louisiana plantation to help educate, as I say, the young and the old alike in what life was like back then. And I really appreciate you donating all of your time. I know that's got to be a sacrifice, but we all appreciate it here in Louisiana. Thank you for coming, and thank all of you for stopping by as we cook the foods of our Louisiana plantations and more of these Taste of Louisiana. Let's check that chili out and see how we bring you coffee.
Okay.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Bruce's Yams and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products. Additional funding is provided by the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. Gumbo, etouffee, jambalaya, beignet. Come pass a good time in Louisiana and say things you've never seen before.
Chef John Folse's Plantation Celebrations, Recipes from Our Louisiana Mansions, is a full-color 335-page book containing food history, recipes, and over 150 photographs from these southern landmarks. For your copy, send a check or money order for $28.50 to Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7860 Anselmo Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Or use your credit card by calling toll-free 1-800-973-7246.